Today, we are going to discuss a case that made even the most cynical investigators of the Royal Canadian Mounted Police shudder. A case with twists so unexpected and unthinkable that it seems like a dark script for a Hollywood thriller. But every detail, every crime, and every broken life in this story is 100% true. This isn't just the story of a single murder. It is a web of multiple tragedies spanning decades across several provinces. And to untangle it, we have to start with the picture-perfect facade that hid a living nightmare. 1. Oshawa, Ontario. Charlotte Lemieux seemed to be the embodiment of the Canadian dream. Charming, incredibly intelligent, with a kind heart. She was a cadet in her high school training program and one of the top students in her graduating class. All doors were open to her. Charlotte earned a full-ride scholarship to the prestigious University of Waterloo. Her ultimate dream was to become an aerospace engineer and work for the Canadian Space Agency. But she never went to university. During her final months of high school, Charlotte was hiding a terrible secret from everyone. She was pregnant. The father was her high school boyfriend, whom she never told. Frightened, Charlotte tried to run away with him, but the plan failed. Ultimately, she secretly gave birth to a baby boy and put him up for adoption to a wealthy couple from Alberta. This moment became the point of no return. Her bright future was shattered. The scholarship was lost. Charlotte decided to start with a clean slate and moved to Vancouver, British Columbia, but she didn't move alone. By her side was a man named Richard Blanchard, and he was much older than her. The relationship between Charlotte and Richard seemed strange and unnatural to those around them. It was unclear exactly what they were to each other. Relatives, lovers, or just roommates. In British Columbia, Charlotte became pregnant again, this time by another man. In 1988, a boy named Liam was born, and Richard, surprisingly, agreed to raise the child with her. But life was hard. Richard called himself a painter, but he constantly complained of a bad back and barely worked. The family lived on welfare to somehow feed her son. The brilliant high school graduate with dreams of space had to get a job as an exotic dancer. At the club, Charlotte befriended 18-year-old Emily Gagnon. The girls became inseparable, but Richard absolutely despised the new friend. In 1989, during a joint boating trip, a serious fight broke out between Richard and Emily. In retaliation, Emily called social services and reported that Charlotte was hiding her income from dancing to illegally receive welfare. The payments were immediately cut off. When Richard found out, he flew into a rage. He stormed into the club, dragged Emily outside, and brutally beat her in front of witnesses. Shortly after this incident, Emily Gagnon vanished without a trace. Her abandoned car was found at the airport, but the girl herself was nowhere to be found. Richard and Charlotte became the prime suspects, but there was no evidence. So the couple decided to run. They constantly changed their names and moved from province to province until they settled in Winnipeg, Manitoba. In 1989, they officially got married. Richard claimed he only did it to give little Liam his last name. Charlotte continued to work in clubs. Her colleagues adored her, but they were terrified of Richard. He threatened the dancers and once dropped the phrase, "If she ever leaves me, I'll kill her." And Richard didn't know that this was exactly what Charlotte was planning to do. She was secretly preparing an escape to save herself and her son. She didn't make it. Charlotte was found unconscious on the side of a highway. The police decided it was a typical hit and run struck by an unknown driver who fled the scene. Richard coldly stated that he was asleep at home at the time of the accident. At the hospital, Charlotte began to recover. Her co-workers from the club visited her constantly, rejoicing in her improvement. But suddenly, Richard banned all visitors without any explanation. 5 days after the accident, Charlotte suddenly died. The attending physician was shocked. He noticed old bruises on the girl's body and noted in the report that the fatal head injury might not have been caused by a car. Her death was classified as a homicide, but no one could prove Richard's guilt. Richard didn't even think about paying for a headstone for his wife. Instead, the first thing he did was contact the insurance companies to collect $80,000. He had taken out a life insurance policy on Charlotte just a couple of months before her death. A coincidence? Investigators didn't think so. But here the system glitched. Richard had changed aliases so often that the social insurance numbers he provided didn't match. He had to give his real name, Richard Blanchard. And that's when the police's jaws dropped. They weren't just dealing with a grieving widower. In 1962, 19-year-old Richard was sentenced to 20 years for the kidnapping and assault of a 4-year-old girl. He escaped from a psychiatric clinic, robbed a bank the next day, went back to prison, got out, tried to abduct a woman at a gas station in '72, made bail, and disappeared for decades. Richard was immediately arrested. Little Liam was taken by social services and placed in a foster family. A DNA test completely destroyed Richard's lies. Liam was not his biological son. The court forbade Richard from going anywhere near the child. It seemed justice had prevailed. But Richard got out of prison 4 years later. On September 12, 1994, Richard burst into Liam's elementary school, threatening the principal, David Thompson, with a gun. He kidnapped the boy in front of everyone, forced the principal to drive them into the woods, tied the man to a tree, and fled in his pickup truck with the child. Richard was caught 2 months later in Saskatchewan, but Liam wasn't with him. During interrogations, Richard only smirked. "It's none of your business where he is, and I don't care how much you miss him." In 1995, a random mechanic from Quebec bought the very pickup truck Richard had used to flee with Liam at an auction. While taking apart the interior, he found a hidden large envelope. Inside were 97 photographs. They depicted a beaten and bound woman. Police compared the wounds on the woman's face with skeletal remains recently found in the woods of British Columbia. It was a 100% match. It was the missing dancer, Emily Gagnon. Richard was sentenced to 52 years for the kidnapping of Liam, who was declared a missing person, and to life in prison for the murder of Emily. But detectives were in no rush to close the case, because in that same envelope were other photographs, old, yellowed snapshots in which Richard was abusing a little girl. The police launched a massive investigation to find out who this child was. It took them almost 20 years, and what they discovered in 2014 made the world shudder. It turned out that Charlotte Lemieux never existed. In the mid-1970s, while on the run, Richard met a woman named Sarah Campbell. Sarah had 4 children. When the mother was sent to jail for 30 days for passing bad checks, she left the children with Richard. Upon her return, Sarah found an empty house. Richard had taken everyone. He gave 3 of the children to different orphanages, separating them forever. But he kept Sarah's oldest daughter for himself. Her name was Sophie Marie Bouchard, the very girl from those horrifying photos. Richard Blanchard kidnapped his own stepdaughter when she was a child. He raised her, made up the name Charlotte Lemieux for her. He abused her for many years, and when she grew up, he married her. And as most investigators believe, he killed her when she tried to escape with his grandson, Liam. Only in 2014, after decades of lies, Richard confessed to investigators that he shot little Liam on the same day he kidnapped him from school. He dumped the child's body near the highway. The remains were never found. Richard claimed they were most likely dragged away by wild animals. Richard Blanchard has still never been found guilty of the murder of Sophie Bouchard. He refuses to speak a single word about the day of her death, awaiting the end of his days in a maximum security prison. This case is a terrifying reminder of how much can hide behind the perfect smile of a straight-A student, a girl who looked at the stars and dreamed of space, but could never escape her living hell. Take care of yourselves and your loved ones. See you.